When I got to the farmhouse that Saturday morning and found Emily crying in the kitchen, I knew I had made the worst mistake of my life. She was standing at the sink, her hands buried in soapy water, her shoulders slumped as if she were carrying the weight of the entire world. Her hair, always so well kept, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had dark circles under her eyes so deep it looked like she hadn't slept in days. And she was crying silently, the way women cry when they don't even have the strength to make a sound. Behind her in the living room that opened into the kitchen, there were at least 8 people. Michael's mother, Linda, that woman who from day one had looked at me as if I were an obstacle in her path. His 2 sisters with their shrill voices and their laughs that sounded like mockery. The younger brother with his wife and their 2 kids who were running wild through the house. All of them were sprawled on the furniture like they owned the place, demanding coffee, asking for more bread, shouting that the jam was gone. And my daughter, my Emily, served them. She served them as if she were the maid in her own home. "Emily, where's the sugar?" one of the sisters yelled without even looking at her. "Emily, these eggs are cold. Make me some more," Michael's mother ordered in that tone that allowed no reply. My daughter moved from one side to the other like a ghost, obeying every command, cleaning every plate, putting up with every belittling comment. And I, standing in the doorway, felt the rage begin to rise from the pit of my stomach. This was not what I had planned. This was not why I bought this farmhouse. It had been exactly a year and a half since Emily had gotten out of her first marriage. 18 years with a man who abused her in every way possible without ever raising a hand. He ignored her for weeks, told her she was useless, that she was good for nothing, that she had ruined his life. When she finally got the courage to ask for a divorce, he kept everything. The house they had bought together, the savings, even the car I had given her for her 30th birthday. Emily came to my house with 2 suitcases and a shattered soul. For months, I watched her walk through my living room like a zombie, not knowing what to do with her life, not knowing how to start over at 43. She cried every night thinking she had already lost her chance to be happy, to have a family, to have her own place in this world. And I, as a mother, as a woman who had been through my own battles, decided to do something. I had $45,000 saved money I had scraped together over 30 years working as an accountant. Money I had saved for my retirement for my final years so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. But when I saw my daughter like that, I knew that money had a more important purpose. I found this farmhouse just outside the city. It wasn't big, but it was beautiful. 5 acres of land with fruit trees, a 3-bedroom house, a spacious kitchen with windows that looked out onto the garden. It cost $52,000, so I had to take out a $7,000 loan from the bank. But I didn't care. When I saw Emily's face the day I gave her the keys, I knew I had made the right decision. "It's mine, Mom," she asked me, her eyes full of tears. "It's really mine." "Yours and no one else's," I said, hugging her tight. "A place where you can start over, where no one can make you feel less than what you are." That day we cried together. We cried with happiness, with hope, with that feeling that things were finally going to get better. I imagined Emily living here peacefully, tending to her garden, maybe starting a small baking business like she had always dreamed. I imagined her at peace. I never imagined this. I never imagined that 6 months later she would meet Michael in a supermarket, that he would be so charming at first, so attentive, so different from her ex-husband. I never imagined they would get married so quickly, barely 4 months after meeting. And I certainly never imagined he would bring this family with him, who had now turned my daughter's refuge into their personal vacation spot. "Sharon, what a surprise," said Michael's mother when she finally saw me standing in the kitchen entrance. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold as ice. "We didn't know you were coming today." "It's my farmhouse," I said, my voice calm, though I was boiling inside. "I can come whenever I want." She smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who thinks they've already won, who already has everything under control. Of course," she said, getting up from the sofa and walking toward me with the confidence of someone who feels they own the place. "Although technically it belongs to your daughter and my son now, doesn't it? They're married. What belongs to one belongs to the other." I felt my skin crawl. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly which buttons to push. "Emily," I called out without taking my eyes off Linda, which was the name of this viper dressed as a respectable lady. "Come here, please." My daughter looked up from the sink. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at me with a mix of relief and fear, as if my presence could save her, but also make things worse. "I'm busy, Mom," she said in a broken voice. "I have to finish cleaning up breakfast." "Let someone else clean it," I said firmly. "Come here, now." Linda laughed. She laughed in my face as if I had told the funniest joke in the world. "Oh, Sharon, don't be so dramatic. Emily is just helping with the chores. We're family, aren't we? Families help each other." I looked around the living room. Michael's two sisters were sprawled on the sofa watching TV with their feet up on my coffee table. The brother was in the garden smoking without a care in the world. The children had left a mess of toys and food all over the floor, and not one of them was lifting a finger to help. "How long have you all been here?" I asked. 2 weeks, Linda answered, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "And we're staying all summer. Michael invited us. He says there's plenty of room, and what's the point of having a farmhouse if you don't share it with family?" 2 weeks. My daughter had been living this hell for 2 weeks and hadn't told me a thing. "And where is Michael?" I asked, trying to stay calm, although every second that passed I felt the pressure in my chest building. "He went out with his father to look at some land," Linda replied, settling back onto the sofa as if it were her personal throne. "They'll be back for lunch. By the way, Emily, it's almost 11. You should start preparing something. You know my son doesn't like to eat late." Emily nodded silently and began pulling pots from the cabinet with mechanical movements like a robot programmed to obey. Seeing my daughter like this broke my heart. This was not the woman I had raised. This was not the strong woman who had survived an abusive marriage and found the courage to start over. I walked toward her and touched her arm gently. She flinched as if my touch had burned her, and then I saw something that chilled my blood. She had red marks on her wrists, as if she had been scrubbing dishes and floors for hours without rest. Her hands were cracked, swollen. Her nails, which she always kept perfect, were broken and dirty. "Emily, I need to talk to you," I said in a low voice. "Alone." "Sharon, why don't you sit with us for a bit?" One of Michael's sisters interrupted the younger one. I think her name was Jessica. "We're watching a great soap opera. Emily can get you a coffee." "I didn't come here to watch television," I replied without even looking at her. "I came to talk to my daughter." What an attitude," the other sister Megan muttered. "Loud enough for me to hear. Now I see where Emily gets it from." I turned around to face her. She was a woman of about 35, with bleached blonde hair and nails so long I wondered how she could do anything with them. She was eating grapes from a bowl, spitting the seeds directly onto my wooden table. "What attitude?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She shrugged, still watching the TV. Nothing. I'm just saying that sometimes Emily gets a little sensitive, as if doing a few chores is the end of the world." I took a deep breath, 1, 2, 3 times. I had promised myself years ago that I would never lose control in front of people who weren't worth it, that I would never give them the satisfaction of seeing me explode. But these people were testing every ounce of patience I had. "Emily, let's go outside," I said, taking my daughter's arm firmly but gently. "But lunch," she started to protest. "Lunch can wait." I pulled her out of the kitchen before anyone else could object. We walked toward the backyard, away from the prying eyes and ears of that family of parasites. Emily walked with her head down, dragging her feet as if they each weighed 100 pounds. When we reached the old swing set that I had installed myself the week after I bought the farmhouse, I made her sit down. I knelt in front of her, ignoring the pain in my 70-year-old knees, and took her destroyed hands in mine. "Tell me," I said simply. "Tell me everything." And then, as if someone had opened a floodgate, Emily began to cry. Not that silent weeping I had seen in the kitchen, but a deep, gut-wrenching sob, the cry of someone who had been holding everything in for far too long. "I don't know how it happened, Mom," she sobbed. "Everything was going so well. Michael was so good to me, so different. He made me feel special, important. He never mentioned his family was like this. He never told me his mother was so controlling, I offered. Manipulative, abusive. She nodded as the tears kept falling. When we got married, they just came to visit every now and then. A Sunday here, a Saturday there. Linda always made comments, but Michael said that was just her way, that she didn't mean any harm. I tried to get along with her, Mom. I really tried. I know, honey, I know. But 3 weeks ago, Linda called Michael saying she needed a favor, that her landlord had raised the rent on her apartment and she needed a place to stay while she found something cheaper. Michael asked me if she could come for a few days. I didn't want to, but how could I say no? She's his mother. I felt the anger growing inside me, but I kept quiet, letting her talk. She arrived with 2 suitcases, Emily continued. She said it would only be a week. But on the 3rd day, Jessica showed up with her things, saying she'd had a fight with her boyfriend and needed a place to stay. Then Megan arrived saying her apartment was being remodeled. Then David came with his wife and kids saying they wanted to spend a few days in the country. And Michael said nothing. I stated not a question. Emily shook her head. He says yes to everything. If his mother asks for something, he can't say no. He says we owe them hospitality because they're his family, that this house is big enough for everyone, that I'm exaggerating when I complain. Exaggerating, I repeated, feeling my blood temperature rise. Exaggerating when they're treating you like a servant in your own house. Linda says it's my duty as a daughter-in-law to take care of the family. That's how things are done in her family, that a good wife always puts others' needs first. Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I'm the one being selfish. Maybe this is how normal families work, and I just don't know, because I grew up with just you. Those words hit me like a slap. My daughter was doubting herself, her worth, her right to be treated with respect in her own home, and all because a manipulative woman had found a way into her head. Emily, look at me, I said, taking her face in my hands. Look me in the eyes. She slowly raised her gaze. Her brown eyes, so much like mine, were filled with pain and confusion. None of this is normal, I said in a firm voice. None of this is right. A family doesn't use you. A family doesn't exploit you. A family doesn't make you feel like a stranger in your own house. But Michael says, I don't care what Michael says, I interrupted. This house isn't Michael's. This house is yours. I put it in your name. Remember, only your name is on the deed. I made sure of that specifically so that no one could ever take it from you. When I bought the farmhouse, I was very clear with the lawyer. I told him I wanted everything in Emily's name only. Not even I was listed as a co-owner. I had learned from my own marriage 40 years ago that a woman needs to have something that is completely her own, something no one can touch, something that gives her security and power. But we're married, Emily said in a small voice. What's mine is his. No, I said firmly. This house is a private asset you acquired before the marriage. Legally, it is only yours, and that means you decide who stays and who goes. I saw something change in my daughter's eyes, a small spark of hope maybe, or maybe rebellion. I can't kick them out, Mom, she whispered. Michael would never forgive me. And is he forgiving you for being miserable? Is he forgiving you for crying in your own kitchen? Is he defending you from his family? Silence, a silence that said more than 1,000 words. Where are you sleeping, Emily? I asked suddenly a question that had just crossed my mind. She looked down again. On the small sofa in the den. On the sofa and your bedroom. Linda said she needed a comfortable bed because of her back, and since the master bedroom has the newest mattress, I couldn't hear anymore. I got up from the ground with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Get up, I told Emily, holding out my hand. She looked at me confused, wiping the last tears from her cheeks. What are you going to do, Mom? I'm going to remind those people whose house this is. I walked back toward the kitchen, with Emily following at my heels. I could feel her trembling behind me, probably terrified of what might happen. But I had made a decision. I had seen enough. I had heard enough, and I was not going to allow anyone, absolutely anyone, to treat my daughter this way. When we walked in, the scene was exactly as I had left it. Linda on the sofa like a queen, the sisters lounging and watching TV, the kids running and screaming without supervision. The mess was worse than before. There was juice spilled on the floor, breadcrumbs everywhere, dirty dishes piling up on every available surface. "Emily, you're back," Linda said without even looking at her. "Perfect. I need you to make me a chamomile tea. And make sure it's piping hot this time. The one this morning was lukewarm." I planted myself in front of the television, completely blocking the screen. All eyes turned to me. "Excuse me," Megan said with that bratty teenage tone. "We're watching that." "Not anymore," I replied, my voice calm but firm. I looked for the remote control, which was tossed among the sofa cushions, and turned off the TV. "What do you think you're doing?" Linda stood up, her face twisting into a mask of indignation. "You can't just come in here." "I can and I am," I cut her off. "This is my daughter's house, and I think it's time we had a conversation about the rules." Linda laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Rules, Sharon, I don't think you understand how things work. My son is married to your daughter. That makes us family. And family doesn't need rules for visiting." "Visiting?" I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. "That's an interesting word. A visit lasts a day, maybe two. Maybe a weekend if you get along well. But you all have been here for 2 weeks. That's not a visit. That's an invasion." Jessica stood up from the sofa, crossing her arms. "Look, lady, I don't know what Emily told you, but we are not an invasion. Michael invited us. This is his house as much as it is hers." "No," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "It's not. This house is solely in Emily's name. Michael has no legal rights to this property. So technically not even he can invite anyone without her permission." I watched their expressions change, confusion, surprise, and then something that looked like fear in Linda's eyes. "That can't be true," she said slowly. "Michael told us the house belonged to both of them. Michael lied to you, or he simply assumed something that isn't true." I turned to Emily, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with wide eyes. "Emily, tell your mother-in-law whose house this is." She swallowed hard, looking between her mother-in-law and me. I could see the internal battle on her face, the fear of confronting this woman who had dominated her for weeks. But then something shifted. I saw her shoulders straighten just a little, her chin lift just an inch. "It's mine," she said, her voice shaky but audible. "My mother gave it to me before I met Michael. It's only in my name." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Linda stared at both of us as if she were recalculating the entire situation. I could see the gears turning in her head, searching for a new strategy, a new way to spin the situation in her favor. "Well," she said finally with a forced smile, "that doesn't change anything, does it? Emily wants us here. She's so sweet, so generous. She's not like other daughters-in-law I've known who are selfish and petty. She understands the value of family." She was using the oldest weapon in the book, guilt, making it seem like any objection from Emily would mean she was a bad person, a bad wife, a bad daughter-in-law. "Emily," I said without taking my eyes off Linda, "do you want these people to be here?" There was a long pause. All eyes were on my daughter. I could see her struggling with the answer, how years of conditioning from her first marriage told her she had to be nice. She had to please everyone, that saying what she really thought would make her a horrible person. Emily began in a weak voice. "The truth, honey," I said softly. "Just the truth." She took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was stronger. "No, I don't want you here." Linda gasped as if she'd been slapped. Jessica and Megan looked at each other in shock. Even the kids stopped running for a moment. "You can't be serious," Linda said, "after everything we've done for you. After accepting you into our family. After my son saved you from being a divorced, lonely woman." And there it was, the true face of this woman. Not the sweet, manipulative tone, but pure venom. "Saved," I repeated, feeling the rage finally find its voice. "Your son didn't save anyone. Emily didn't need saving. She had her own house, her own life. If anyone benefited from this marriage, it was him. "How dare you!" Linda took a step toward me, her eyes blazing. "My son is a good man. He works hard. He's the one who pays the bills in this house." "What bills?" I asked. "The electricity. The water. Because I imagine with 8 people living here, those bills must be quite high lately." She opened her mouth to answer, but shut it quickly. I had hit a nerve. "Emily," I said, turning to my daughter, "who has been paying the utilities since they arrived?" She looked down. "I have. Michael said his money was tight this month because he's saving for a project. And the food. This house was fully stocked when I left 3 weeks ago. Now I see the pantry is almost empty." "I did the shopping," Emily admitted. 3 times this week, almost $800 in total." $800? My daughter had spent $800 to feed this family of freeloaders in 2 weeks. "And have they contributed anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Emily shook her head. I turned back to Linda with a cold smile. "So let me see if I understand this correctly. You all arrived here, settled into my daughter's house, have been eating her food, using her utilities, sleeping in her bed, and on top of that, you've turned her into your personal maid. And all of this without paying a single cent." "We're family," Linda repeated, but now her voice sounded less certain. "Family doesn't charge each other." "You're right," I said, nodding slowly. "Family doesn't charge, but family also doesn't exploit. Family doesn't humiliate. Family doesn't turn your home into your prison." "This is ridiculous," Megan chimed in, getting up from the sofa. "Mom, you don't have to listen to this. When Michael gets here, he's going to put these 2 in their place." "Michael isn't going to do anything," I said with a certainty that surprised even Emily. "Because by the time Michael gets here, you all will be gone." The room fell completely silent. Even the kids had frozen, sensing the tension in the air. "What did you say?" Linda asked slowly, dangerously. "You heard me," I replied. "It's time for you to pack your bags and leave. All of you." Linda looked at me as if I had gone insane. Then she let out a dry, humorless laugh filled with contempt. "You can't kick us out," she said, crossing her arms. "This isn't your house, Sharon. It's your daughter's. And my son's, and as far as I know, my son has as much right to be here as anyone." "Your son can stay if Emily decides so," I replied. "But you are not welcome." "And who's going to make us leave?" Jessica asked with a mocking smile. "You, a 70-year-old woman, please." I walked toward her, slowly looking her directly in the eyes. She was taller than me, younger. She probably thought that gave her some kind of advantage. But I had lived 70 years in this world. I had raised a daughter alone after my husband died when Emily was only 5. I had worked in offices full of men who thought they could intimidate me. I had survived loss, betrayal, and pain that this spoiled girl couldn't even imagine. "Be careful about underestimating older women," I said in a low but firm voice. "We've survived too much to be afraid of people like you." Jessica took a step back, her smile faltering. "Emily," Linda said, ignoring me completely and turning to my daughter, "you're not going to allow this, are you? You're not going to let your mother come in here and cause problems in your marriage. Think about Michael. Think about how he'll feel when he finds out you kicked his family out." And there it was again, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail, the way to make Emily doubt herself, to make her feel guilty for wanting peace in her own home. I saw Emily open her mouth, probably to give in, to apologize, to say it was all fine. But before she could speak, I stepped in. "Michael can feel however he wants," I said, "but he'll have to understand that his wife deserves respect in her own home. And if he can't understand that, then maybe he needs to ask himself what kind of man he is." "Are you trying to destroy their marriage?" Linda accused, her voice rising. "That's what you're doing, isn't it? You never liked your daughter finding someone. You always wanted to keep her dependent on you." That accusation was so absurd, it almost made me laugh. I, who had spent my life savings to give my daughter independence. I, who had worked double shifts for years to make sure she never lacked anything. I, who had prayed every night that she would find someone who truly made her happy. I'm not going to dignify that with a response, I said simply. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get off this property. 1 hour, Megan shrieked. Are you crazy? We have suitcases, boxes, the kids have toys all over the house. Then I suggest you start now instead of continuing to argue. David, who had been quiet all this time smoking in the garden, finally came inside. He was a burly man about 40, with a beer belly and a perpetually bored expression. What's going on in here? He asked, looking between his mother and me. This woman is kicking us out, his wife said, a thin woman with a shrill voice who hadn't opened her mouth until now. Can you believe it? She's kicking us out. David looked me up and down, sizing me up. I could see the contempt in his eyes, the way he assumed he could intimidate me just by being a man, just by being bigger. Ma'am, he said in a voice that tried to sound threatening, I think you're a little confused. This is my brother's house, and we are my brother's guests, so you have no authority to tell us anything. I took my cell phone out of my pocket. A simple gesture, but it made everyone tense up. What are you going to do? Linda asked suspiciously. Call the police. Don't be ridiculous. They won't do anything. We haven't committed any crime. I'm not going to call the police, I said, dialing a number I knew by heart. I'm going to call my lawyer. I saw the expressions change. The lawyer. That word has power. It has weight. It means legal consequences, documents, official things that can't be ignored or manipulated with sweet talk. The phone rang twice before he answered. Sharon, what a surprise. How are you? Hello, Richard, I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I need you to clarify something for me about the deed for the farmhouse we bought for Emily last year. Of course, go ahead. The house is solely in her name, correct? Her husband has no ownership rights. Correct. It's a private asset acquired before the marriage. It's completely in her name. Why is there a problem? There are people on the property who are refusing to leave after being asked to do so. Can my daughter legally demand that they leave? Absolutely. It's her private property. If she asks someone to leave and that person refuses, that constitutes trespassing. She can call the police and they will have to escort them off. I looked at Linda as she heard every word coming from the phone. Her face had gone pale. And what if they are her husband's relatives? I asked. It doesn't matter. The law is clear. Private property means the owner decides who can be there and who cannot. The fact that they're related to the husband gives them no legal rights. Perfect. Thank you very much, Richard. If I need anything else, I'll call you. I hung up the phone and put it back in my pocket. The silence in the room was absolute. Did you hear that? I asked, looking at each of them. If you are not off this property in 1 hour, Emily is going to call the police. And believe me, you don't want that to happen. Cops aren't gentle when they have to remove trespassers from private property. This is unbelievable, Linda muttered. Absolutely unbelievable. Just wait until Michael finds out about this. Wait until he knows his own wife threw his family out on the street. Michael is free to have his opinion, I said. But this is the reality. His family has abused Emily's hospitality. They have turned her home into their personal hotel. They have spent her money, taken over her space, and treated her like a servant, and now that's over. We did no such thing, Megan yelled. Emily is exaggerating as always. She's so dramatic. Dramatic? I repeated, feeling the temperature of my voice drop dangerously. My daughter's hands are destroyed from cleaning and cooking for you. She hasn't slept in her own bed for 2 weeks because your mother appropriated it. She has spent $800 on food that you devoured without contributing a cent, and you call her dramatic. Megan opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out, because she knew it was true. They all knew. Mom, Emily said in a trembling voice from her spot in the kitchen doorway, what's going to happen when Michael gets here? It was the question that had been floating in the air all this time. Michael, the husband Linda's son, the man caught in the middle of all this. That's up to him, I answered honestly. He can get angry, he can try to defend his family, or he can see this for what it really is, a necessary intervention to protect his marriage and his wife's mental health. He's going to take our side, Linda said with certainty. My son knows where his loyalties lie. He knows family comes first. His family is Emily now, I said, looking directly at her. When he married her, she became his priority, not you. She. That's what you think, Linda spat. But a son is always a son. Blood is thicker than any marriage certificate. And there was the real truth. This woman's deep-seated belief that her son would always belong to her, that no wife could ever be more important than his mother. It was a battle Emily could never win, not as long as Michael remained tied to Linda's manipulations. "You have 50 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. "I suggest you stop talking and start packing." For a moment, nobody moved. They all just stood there staring at me, as if they expected me to back down to say it was all a joke, that of course they could stay. But I didn't budge. I stood there planted firmly, my arms crossed, and an expression that made it clear I was not going to change my mind. Finally, it was David who spoke. "This is stupid. I'm calling Michael." He pulled out his phone and dialed. We all waited in silence as the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. "He's not answering," he muttered, putting the phone away in frustration. "Then I suggest you start packing and explain the situation to him when he finally answers," I said without compassion. Linda shot me a look. If looks could kill, I'd be dead on the floor. But I had faced worse looks. I had faced bosses who screamed at me, doctors who gave me bad news, bank officers who told me I didn't qualify for loans. An angry look from a manipulative woman wasn't going to make me back down. "Fine," she said at last, her voice icy. "We'll go, but this isn't over. Michael is going to know exactly what happened here today." And she turned to my daughter with an expression of profound disappointment. "Emily, I hope you're ready for the consequences of blaming your husband for defending your mom instead of your marriage." It was her last arrow, her last attempt to plant seeds of doubt and guilt in Emily's heart. And for a second, I saw it work. I saw my daughter's eyes fill with fear, her shoulders shrink. "Emily isn't blaming anyone." I intervened before Linda could do any more damage. "She is defending her right to live in peace in her own home. If Michael has a problem with that, then the problem is his, not hers." Linda made a dismissive sound and stormed off toward the master bedroom, the one she had occupied, as if it were her own. Jessica and Megan followed her, muttering to each other, just loud enough for us to hear words like ungrateful and awful. David stayed a moment longer looking at me, with something between respect and resentment. "You know this is going to cause a family war, right?" "If defending my daughter causes a war," I replied calmly, "then so be it." He shook his head and went outside to gather his children's things. His wife followed, shooting me venomous looks as she picked up toys from the floor. When we were finally alone in the living room, Emily collapsed onto the sofa, her body shaking. I sat next to her and held her tight like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. "Did I do the right thing, Mom?" she asked in a broken voice. "Or did I just destroy my marriage?" "Honey," I said, stroking her hair, "a marriage that can only survive if you agree to be mistreated is not a marriage worth saving." "But I love Michael." "I know, and maybe he loves you too. But love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect. And his family doesn't respect you. And worse, he hasn't defended you from them." We stayed like that for several minutes, listening to the sounds of suitcases being dragged, drawers, opening and closing, voices arguing in distant rooms. The sound of an invasion finally being dismantled. "I'm scared," Emily admitted. "I'm scared Michael will leave me." "Of being alone again, of failing at another marriage." "Listen to me carefully," I said, taking her face in my hands so she would look me in the eyes. "If Michael leaves you because you didn't let his family mistreat you, then he did you a favor, because it would mean he was never the man you thought he was, and you deserve better than that." "But I'm 43, Mom. Who's going to want me at this age? I already failed once." "You didn't fail at anything," I cut her off firmly. "Your first husband was an abuser. That was not your fault, and if this marriage doesn't work, it won't be your fault either. The fault lies with men who don't know how to value the extraordinary women they have by their side." She rested her head on my shoulder and cried. Not the silent cry from the kitchen, nor the hysterical cry from the garden. This was a cry of relief, of release, of years of holding in emotions, because she had to be strong, because she had to keep the peace, because she had to be the good wife, the good daughter-in-law, the good woman. Half an hour later, we heard the sound of vehicles arriving. My heart sped up a little. Michael was here. Emily tensed beside me immediately, quickly wiping her tears. "It's okay," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm here. You're not alone." The door opened, and Michael walked in, a man of medium height with hair just starting to gray at the temples. Behind him was his father, a quiet older man who rarely said anything at family gatherings. "What's going on here?" Michael asked, looking at the suitcases piled up in the living room. "Why is everyone packing? Are you going on vacation or something?" Linda stormed out of the bedroom like a thundercloud, her face red with fury. "Michael, thank God you're here. Your mother-in-law has gone crazy. She's kicking us out of the house." Michael looked at me confused, then at Emily. What is she talking about?" "Michael," Emily began in a shaky voice, but I stood up and spoke for her. "I asked your family to leave this property because they have been abusing Emily's hospitality for 2 weeks." "Abusing," Michael repeated as if the word made no sense. "They're my family. I told them they could stay as long as they needed." "This isn't your house to be making those invitations," I said calmly but firmly. "What do you mean it's not my house?" His voice rose. "I'm Emily's husband. I live here. Of course it's my house. Living in a house doesn't make it yours legally," I explained. "This property is solely in Emily's name. It's a private asset she acquired before she married you. You have no ownership rights to this farmhouse." I watched his face change, processing this information he clearly didn't know or had chosen to ignore. That doesn't matter. We're married. What's hers is mine." "Not in this case," I said, shaking my head. "And even if it were legally shared, which it isn't, you still have no right to invite people who mistreat your wife in her own home." "Mistreat?" Michael turned to his mother. "What is she talking about? Did you mistreat her?" Linda put on her best innocent victim face. "Of course not, son. We've been nothing but kind to Emily. She's exaggerating as always. You know how she is. How am I?" Emily's voice cut through the room, suddenly strong. He fell silent, clearly uncomfortable being trapped between his mother and his wife. "Am I exaggerating when I cry because your mother is sleeping in our bed and I'm on the sofa?" Emily continued, her voice trembling but firm. "Am I exaggerating when I spend all my money feeding your family while you save for a project? Am I exaggerating when I get up at 5 in the morning to make breakfast for 8 people and go to bed at 11 at night after cleaning up everyone's messes?" "Emily, you're being dramatic," Michael said, but his voice sounded less convinced. "No," Emily said, taking a step toward him. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm exhausted. I'm hurt. And I'm tired of you ignoring me when I tell you your family is hurting me." Michael opened his mouth to reply, but found no words. I saw him look at his mother, then at Emily, then at me. He was looking for an escape, a way to resolve this, without having to take a side. But that option no longer existed. "Michael," Linda said in her soft, manipulative voice, "your wife is letting her mother come here and destroy our family. Are you going to allow that? Are you going to let a stranger tear us apart?" "I'm not a stranger," I said in an icy voice. "I'm the woman who bought this house for her daughter, the woman who is protecting her daughter from abuse. And if you see that as a negative, then you're the problem." "Nobody is abusing anyone," Linda insisted. "We're family. Families live together. They help each other. They share spaces." "And what have you shared?" Emily asked, her voice now stronger, more confident. "What have you contributed to this house besides more work for me?" Silence. No one answered, because there was no answer. "I'm asking you," Emily continued, looking at every member of the Torres family, "how much money have you put in for food, for the electricity, for the water you waste on your 40-minute showers, for the gas you use when you leave the stove on all morning?" "I didn't know you were keeping score," Jessica mumbled sarcastically. "I'm not keeping score," Emily shot back. "But when you spend $800 in 2 weeks on food for people who don't even say thank you, you start to notice." Michael turned pale. $800? "Yes, Michael, $800. From my money. Because you said you were tight this month. But apparently you're not too tight to go out with your father to look at land, which probably meant going to breakfast and drinking beer while I cooked for your family. I saw something break in Michael's expression, a small crack in his facade that everything was fine. "Emily, I didn't know you felt this way," he said in a softer voice. "I told you," she replied, and now there were tears in her eyes, but there was also fire. "I told you 3 times. The first time you told me I was exaggerating. The second time you told me your mother was just trying to help. The third time you got angry with me and told me I was the one with the problem, not your family." "Son," Linda interrupted, "don't let her manipulate you. She's using tears to make you feel guilty." "Enough!" Michael suddenly shouted, surprising all of us. "That's enough, Mom!" Linda recoiled as if she'd been struck. She was clearly not used to her son speaking to her that way. "Did you know Emily hasn't slept in our bed since you got here?" Michael asked his mother, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "Did you know she's been sleeping on the sofa? Did you even care to ask her if she was comfortable?" I have a bad back," Linda stammered. "I need a firm mattress. I thought Emily would understand." "And why didn't you sleep in one of the guest rooms?" Michael asked. "Why did you have to take our room?" Linda had no answer for that, because the truth was obvious. She had taken the master bedroom because she could, because no one had stopped her, because she wanted to establish dominance over the territory. Michael ran his hands over his face, breathing deeply. When he spoke again, his voice sounded tired, defeated. "Mom, I think you should go." "What?" Linda looked at him as if he had just betrayed her in the worst way possible. "Michael, you can't be serious. I'm your mother." "I know. And I love you. But Emily is right. You've all taken advantage of her kindness. And I let it happen because I didn't want to see what was going on." "Michael, please." Linda's voice was now pure pleading. "Don't do this. Don't make me feel like I'm a bad person. I just wanted to spend time with my family." "You could spend time with us without moving in," Michael said firmly. "You could visit on weekends. We could go out to eat together. But this..." He pointed to the suitcases, the mess, the tension in the air. "This is not a visit. This is an invasion." The words I had said earlier now coming from her own son's mouth, and they hurt more coming from him. Jessica stepped forward, her face red with anger. "I can't believe you're kicking us out for this woman. Your own family, Michael, the people who were there when you were born, when you grew up, when you needed us." "And I'm grateful for that," Michael said, looking at her. "But Emily is my wife. She is my family now, too. And you have all treated her like she's an employee in her own home. How did you expect me to react when I finally opened my eyes?" "You didn't open your eyes?" Megan spat. "You were brainwashed. That old woman." She pointed at me with contempt. "She came here to cause trouble because she can't stand her daughter having a life of her own." I took a step toward her. "Watch what you say, girl. I came here because I found my daughter crying in her own kitchen. Exhausted, humiliated, and treated worse than a dog. And if that seems like causing trouble to you, then you have no idea what family means." "Sharon is right," said a voice we didn't expect to hear. Michael's father, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. "Linda, what we did was wrong. I knew it from the beginning, but I didn't say anything because I never say anything. But this time I can't stay quiet." Linda turned to her husband in shock. "You too. My own husband is going to turn against me." "I'm not against you," he said in a tired voice. "I'm against what we did. We took advantage of Emily's kindness. I watched her work like a slave these past few days, and I did nothing to stop it. And I'm ashamed of that." There was a moment of absolute silence. Linda looked at her husband as if she didn't recognize him. Her children looked at her, waiting for her to say something, to defend them, to somehow turn this into everyone else's fault. But for the first time, Linda was speechless. Her arsenal of manipulation, her guilt tactics, her victim strategies, they had all failed. She was being confronted not only by strangers, but by her own son and her own husband. "Finish packing," Michael said, finally, his voice firm, despite the visible pain in his eyes. "You can stay at my old apartment. I still have the keys. It's in the city. It has 2 bedrooms. It's not big, but it's enough until you find another place." "I'm not going anywhere," Linda said, straightening her back, trying to reclaim some dignity. If we leave, you're coming with us, Michael. That's the only option. I looked at Michael waiting. This was the moment of truth. The moment he would have to truly choose between his mother's manipulation and respect for his wife. Michael looked at his mother, then at Emily, who was standing next to me with tears streaming down her cheeks, but with her head held high. I could see the internal battle on his face, years of conditioning versus what he knew was right. "No, Mom," he said finally. "I'm staying here, with my wife, in her house. Where I should have been all along defending her instead of letting her be treated like this." Linda gasped as if she'd been slapped. Her eyes filled with tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of knowing she had lost the control she'd had over her son for 45 years. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice trembling. "When she disappoints you when this marriage fails just like her first marriage, you're going to regret choosing a stranger over your own blood." "Emily is not a stranger," Michael said with a firmness I hadn't heard from him before. "She's my wife. And if this marriage fails, it will be because I didn't protect her when I should have, not because she wasn't worth it." Linda looked at all of us with a mix of pain and fury that seemed to consume her from the inside. For a moment, I thought she would keep arguing that she would hurl more accusations, more manipulations. But something in Michael's expression, in the firmness of his stance, made her understand that this battle was lost. "Fine," she said at last, her voice icy. "We'll go, but don't expect me to ever speak to you again, not to you, Michael, and not to you, Emily. You've made your choice. Now you'll have to live with the consequences." She turned and marched toward the master bedroom to finish packing. Jessica and Megan followed her, shooting us looks of pure hatred. David and his wife hurriedly gathered their children's things, muttering to each other about ingratitude and disrespect. Michael's father stayed a moment longer. He walked over to Emily and put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I should have said something sooner. I should have defended you." Emily nodded, unable to speak through the tears that were now falling freely. He nodded too and went outside to help load the bags into the car. Michael sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I could see him trembling, processing everything that had just happened. He had defied his mother for the first time in his life, and even though he had done the right thing, it was clear it was costing him every fiber of his being. I went to Emily and hugged her. She clung to me as if I were her life raft, sobbing against my shoulder. They weren't tears of sadness, not completely. They were tears of relief, of release, of years of putting up with things in silence finally coming to an end. The next 30 minutes were organized chaos, suitcases being dragged, boxes being loaded, children crying because they didn't want to leave. Linda moved through the house with the wounded dignity of a dethroned queen, collecting every little thing that belonged to her as if each object were proof of the injustice she had suffered. At one point, Jessica tried to take a decorative lamp from the living room. "That lamp stays here," I said in a firm voice. "I bought it," Jessica lied shamelessly. "No, I bought it," Emily said, raising her voice for the first time. 8 months ago, at that antique shop downtown. It cost $120 and I paid cash. I can show you the receipt if you want." Jessica dropped the lamp in a fury and stormed out of the house without another word. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, all the bags were in the cars. There were 2 vehicles parked outside Linda's car and David's truck. The children were already buckled into their seats, still crying and asking why they had to leave. Linda came out of the house one last time carrying her handbag. She stopped in the doorway, looking at all of us with an expression that tried to be contemptuous but couldn't completely hide the pain. "Michael," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Last chance. Come with us. Don't let these women destroy our family." Michael, who was standing next to Emily with his arm around her, slowly shook his head. "I've already made my decision, Mom. My place is here." Linda pressed her lips into a thin line. "So be it. But when you realize your mistake, when you see that you chose wrong, don't come looking for me. This door closes today, and it will not open again. That's your choice," Michael said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm just choosing my wife. You're the one turning this into a war. Linda didn't answer. She just turned and walked to her car, her back straight and her head high. Jessica and Megan got in the car with her. David, his wife, and their kids got into the truck. Michael's father was the last one in, giving us one last apologetic look before closing the car door. The engine started. The cars began to move slowly down the gravel path toward the gate. Emily. Michael and I stood on the porch, watching them drive away. No one spoke. We just listened to the crunch of the tires on the gravel, the sound of the engines, and then the silence when they finally disappeared from view. Emily was the first to move. She turned to Michael and hugged him tight, sobbing against his chest. He hugged her back, his own tears finally falling. "I'm sorry," Michael whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I should have listened to you. I should have defended you from the beginning. I'm sorry." She couldn't answer. She just cried and held on to him, as if she was afraid he would leave too. I left them to have their moment. I stood on the porch, looking out at the empty road, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired, relieved, and hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this would mark a new beginning for my daughter. After several minutes, I walked over to them and put my hand on Emily's shoulder. "Are you two okay?" I asked softly. Emily nodded, wiping her face. "Yeah, Mom, I think so." Michael looked at me with red eyes. "Sharon, I don't know what to say. You were right about everything. And I was a coward." "You weren't a coward," I said honestly. "You were trapped between two loyalties. That's not easy for anyone. The important thing is that you finally made the right choice." "You think I did the right thing?" he asked, his voice uncertain. "She's my mother. My family." "Your family is Emily now," I said firmly. "And yes, you did the right thing. A mother who truly loves you would never put you in the position of having to choose between her and your happiness. She forced you to choose not you." He nodded, slowly processing my words. "It's going to take time," he said, "to come to terms with all this, with what happened." "I know," I said, "and that's okay. Take the time you need. But in the meantime, take care of your wife. She needs you now more than ever." "I will," he promised, looking at Emily with a tenderness that gave me hope. "I promise you, Emily. I will never let anyone treat you like that again. I will never again ignore you when you tell me something is wrong." Emily looked him in the eyes. "Really? Really?" he said, taking her face in his hands. "You are the most important thing in my life. And I should have shown you that from the beginning." They kissed, a soft kiss full of apologies and promises. And I, feeling that my work here was done, started walking toward my truck. "You're leaving already, Mom?" Emily asked, pulling away from Michael. "You two need time alone," I said, "to talk, to heal, to start over." "But you'll come tomorrow?" she asked in a small voice, still needing my presence, my support. "I'll come whenever you need me," I said, smiling. "But for now, this is your house, your space, your life. And you need to live it without your mom watching over every step." She nodded, understanding, but I saw the glint of tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for defending me, for not letting me get lost." "I'm never going to let you get lost," I said, hugging her one last time. "That's what mothers do. We're there in the darkest moments, reminding our daughters who they really are." I got into my truck and started the engine. Before pulling away, I rolled down the window and looked at them one last time. "Michael," I said, getting his attention, "you take good care of her, because if I ever find her crying in that kitchen again next time, I won't just kick out your family. I'll kick you out too." I wasn't joking, and he knew it. He nodded solemnly. "It won't happen again. You have my word." "Good." I put the truck in gear and started driving down the gravel path. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing together on the porch, holding each other, watching me drive away. They looked small in the distance, fragile, but also united in a way they hadn't been before. I drove back to the city with my mind full of everything that had happened. My hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline still pumping through my veins. I had faced down Linda and her entire family. I had defended my daughter in a way I never thought I'd have to again. And even though I felt exhausted, I also felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. When I got to my apartment in the city, it was almost dark. The streetlights were beginning to turn on, and I could hear the familiar sounds of traffic neighbors' voices, the urban life that had been my home for so long. I made myself a chamomile tea and sat in my favorite armchair, the one I'd bought 20 years ago, that knew every curve of my tired body. My phone rang. It was Emily. "Mom?" Her voice sounded different, lighter, freer. "You made it home, okay?" "Yes, honey. I'm home having my tea." "Michael and I have been talking," she said. "Really talking for the first time in weeks. He apologized for everything. For not listening to me, for not defending me, for letting his family treat me like that." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I forgave him, but that things had to change. That if we were going to stay together, I needed to know he would be on my side when it mattered. That I could never feel that alone in my own marriage again." And what did he say? He cried, Mom. He actually cried. He said he was ashamed of himself, of how he let things get so far, that he had been so programmed to obey his mother that he didn't realize he was betraying his wife in the process. I felt my chest loosen a little. Maybe Michael really had learned something from all this. Maybe this marriage had a chance after all. "I'm glad, honey. I really am." "We're going to clean the house together," Emily continued. "The whole house. Change the sheets, wash everything they touched, rearrange the spaces. Michael says he wants the house to feel like ours again, not a reminder of what happened." "That's a good idea," I said. "Sometimes we need to physically clean a space to be able to emotionally heal." "Mom." Her voice got softer, more vulnerable. "Do you think I'm a bad person for kicking out Michael's family?" "No," I answered without hesitation. "You are a woman who finally stood up for her right to live with dignity in her own home. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you strong." "His mom said horrible things before she left. She said I had destroyed her family, that I was a manipulator, that Michael would regret choosing me." "Those are the words of a woman who lost control," I said firmly. "They have nothing to do with you and everything to do with her. Linda is used to manipulating her son, to having power over him. When you and I confronted her, that power disappeared. And that terrifies her. Do you think he'll ever forgive me? I mean, if his relationship with his mother is ruined because of this." "Emily," I interrupted, "listen to me. You didn't ruin anything. Linda ruined her own relationship with her son by putting him in an impossible position. A good mother wants to see her son happy, even if it means taking a step back. She didn't do that. She chose control over love. Those are the consequences of her own actions, not yours." I heard her breathing on the other end of the line, processing my words. "Thanks, Mom, for coming today, for not leaving me alone." "I will never leave you alone," I promised. "But now I need you to be strong, to hold firm to your boundaries. Because Linda is going to try to come back. She's going to call Michael. She's going to play the victim. She's going to try to manipulate him into feeling guilty. And when that happens, you two need to be united." "We will be," Emily said with a determination that filled me with pride. "Michael promised me he won't let his mother manipulate him again. He says he's going to set clear boundaries. They can see each other, but in neutral places and for short periods. Never living with us again, never any surprise invasions." "That seems fair," I said. "Michael has a right to a relationship with his mother if he wants one, but that relationship can't come at the cost of your peace of mind." We talked for almost another hour. She told me how they had found things hidden all over the house belongings of the Torres family that they had left intentionally to have an excuse to return. A scarf of Linda's in the closet, kids' toys under the sofa, Jessica's toothbrush still in the bathroom. "I'm packing it all up and shipping it to them," Emily said. "I don't want anything of theirs here." When we finally hung up, I sat in my armchair for a long time, looking out the window at the city lights. I thought about my own mother, who had passed away 30 years ago. I wondered if she would have been proud of what I did today, of how I defended my daughter. I think she would have. I think she would understand that sometimes love means being fierce. It means facing dragons. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. The next few days were quiet. Emily called me every night to tell me how things were going. She and Michael were working on their marriage, really talking for the first time about expectations, boundaries, family. They were going to couples therapy, something Emily had suggested, and Michael had agreed to without resistance. The therapist says Michael has what they call enmeshment with his mother, Emily explained in one of our calls. That he never developed healthy boundaries between him and her, which is why it's so hard for him to tell her no. And what does Michael say about that? He says it makes sense, that he always felt he had to please his mother to be a good son, that the thought of disappointing her terrified him more than anything. At least he's recognizing it, I said. That's the first step. A week after the incident, Linda started calling. First she called Michael directly, but he didn't answer. Then she started sending text messages, each one more manipulative than the last. Emily read me some of them. Your father is sick with worry because of you. I can't sleep thinking about how my own son betrayed me. I hope you're happy knowing you destroyed your mother. How is Michael responding? I asked. He's not, Emily said with satisfaction. The therapist told him not to engage with the manipulation, to only respond when she can talk without trying to make him feel guilty. So far, she hasn't been able to. Good, I said. Holding boundaries is the hardest part, especially at the beginning, but it gets easier with time. 2 weeks later, I got my own call from Linda. It was late at night, almost 10 p.m. Sharon? Her voice sounded different, softer, more vulnerable. I need to talk to you. About what? I asked cautiously. About what happened. About my son. About everything. There was something in her tone that made me hesitate. She didn't sound like the manipulative, furious woman who had left that house 2 weeks ago. She sounded tired, maybe even remorseful. All right, I said finally. Talk. I didn't realize, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't realize what I was doing, how I was treating Emily. In my mind, I was just being part of the family, helping, being present. But my husband, he made me see it wasn't like that, that I was abusive, I completed when she couldn't say the word. Silence. Then a sound that sounded like a choked sob. Yes, she admitted finally. Abusive. That word, it's been haunting me. I never thought I was the kind of person who would make someone feel that way. But you did, I said, not softening my words. You turned Emily's home into her prison. You treated her like a servant. And when she tried to stand up for herself, you made her feel like she was the one in the wrong. I know, Linda said, her voice cracking. I know that now, and I don't know how to fix it. Michael won't answer my calls. Emily probably hates me, and I just want my son back. Then start by respecting his boundaries, I said firmly. Stop calling him 20 times a day. Stop sending him messages trying to make him feel guilty. Stop making this about you and your pain and start acknowledging the pain you caused. But it does hurt, Linda said, her voice broken. It hurts not being able to talk to my son. It hurts knowing I lost him. You haven't lost him, I replied. But you will if you keep doing the same thing. Michael needs space. He needs time to heal and strengthen his marriage. And if you really love him, you'll give him that time with no strings attached. And if he never forgives me, then you'll have to live with the consequences of your actions, I said without pity. Just as Emily had to live with the consequences of your abuse for 2 weeks. Just as Michael now has to live with the guilt of not defending her sooner. There was a long silence. I could hear her ragged breathing, her held-back sobs. What should I do? She asked finally. How do I fix this? Start by writing him a letter, I suggested. Not a text, not a call. A real letter where you take responsibility for your actions, without excuses, without justifications. Where you specifically acknowledge what you did wrong and how it affected Emily. And then you give him space. He will decide if and when to respond. And if he doesn't respond, then you respect his silence. And you keep working on yourself on understanding why you did what you did so you never do it again. Okay, Linda said in a small voice. I'll do it. I'll write the letter. Linda, I said before hanging up. One more thing. If this is another manipulation, if you're trying to find a new way to get control over Michael, I'm warning you now. It won't work. Emily and I are watching, and we won't let you hurt him again. It's not manipulation, she said quickly. I promise. I just want my son back. And if that means changing, then I'll change. I hung up the phone, not knowing whether to believe her or not. Time would tell. Manipulators can fake remorse, but they can't sustain it for long. Eventually, their true colors always show. A month after the whole incident, Emily invited me to the farmhouse for lunch. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize the place. They had planted new flowers in the garden. The walls were freshly painted a soft yellow. There were new curtains in the windows, a new table in the dining room, and the whole house smelled like clean and new beginnings. "Do you like it?" Emily asked with a bright smile I hadn't seen on her face in months. Michael and I have been renovating every corner. We wanted it to feel like a new place with no memories of what happened. "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "It feels like a real home." Michael came out of the kitchen with a tray of lemonade. He looked different too. More relaxed, more present. He greeted me with a sincere hug. "Sharon, thanks for coming. Emily was excited to show you everything." We sat in the garden under the shade of the old tree. Emily told me about her plans to start her baking business from home, something she had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to try. Michael had built a small additional oven in the kitchen just for her. "And your mother?" I asked eventually, the question that had been hanging in the air. Michael sighed. "She sent the letter, the one you suggested. It was hard to read. She owned up to everything, no excuses. She apologized specifically to Emily for every single thing she did, and she said she understood if we didn't want any contact with her." "And what did you decide?" "We responded," Emily said. "We told her we appreciated the apology, but that we needed time, that when we were ready we could meet in a neutral place for short periods. But that she would never be welcome in our home again unless she proved with actions, not just words, that she had changed. And she accepted it." "Yes," Michael said. "She said she would wait as long as it takes. That she would do whatever was necessary to rebuild the trust." "We'll see," I said skeptically. "Time will tell if she's sincere." "I know," Michael nodded. "That's why we're not in any hurry. Emily is my priority now. And if my mother can't respect that, then she'll have to live with the consequences." We spent the afternoon eating, laughing, sharing stories. It was the first time in a long time that I saw Emily truly happy, truly at peace. And watching Michael look at her with that protective love, with that genuine attention, it gave me hope that maybe this marriage could survive after all. As I was about to leave, Emily stopped me on the porch. "Mom," she said, taking my hands in hers, "I never properly thanked you for what you did, for coming that day, for defending me when I couldn't defend myself." "You don't have to thank me," I said. "That's what mothers do." "No," she insisted. "Not all mothers do that. A lot of women your age would have stayed quiet. They'd say it's not their problem that married daughters have to solve their own conflicts. But you came. You faced down an entire family for me. You risked Michael leaving me. You risked making things worse. But you did it anyway, because you knew it was the right thing." I felt tears stinging my eyes. "You're my daughter," I said simply. "And no one, absolutely, no one has the right to treat you the way they did. If I hadn't stepped in, if I had let you stay in that situation, I never would have forgiven myself." We hugged a tight hug, mother and daughter survivors of different storms, but bound by an unbreakable love. "I love you, Mom," Emily whispered. "I love you too, honey. Always." I drove back to the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. I thought about everything that had happened in the last month, about how a situation that seemed desperate had found its resolution, about how my daughter had found her voice, her strength, her home again. I didn't know what would happen with Linda, if she would really change or if she would eventually revert to her true nature. But that didn't matter as much anymore, because now Emily knew how to defend herself. Michael knew how to protect her, and I knew that I had done the right thing. There are times in life when love means being kind and patient, and there are times when love means being fierce and unyielding. That day at the farmhouse, I had been both. I had been the mother my daughter needed in her darkest moment. And as I drove through the lit-up city streets with the soft sound of the radio filling the silence, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride in myself, in my daughter, in the strong woman I had raised. Because at the end of the day, that's what we mothers do. We teach our daughters to be strong. We show them they have value, that they deserve respect, that no relationship is worth it if it comes at the cost of their dignity. And when they forget these lessons, when life hits them so hard, they lose sight of who they are, we are there to remind them. We are there to tell them, get up. You are stronger than you think. And I will stand by your side while you fight. Because that's what it means to be a mother. It's not just giving life, it's teaching how to live with dignity. It's showing by example that some battles are worth fighting. It's being the shield when they don't have the strength to defend themselves, and being the mirror that reminds them who they really are when the world tries to make them forget. I got to my apartment that night feeling the weight of my 70 years, but also feeling something younger, more vital. I had spent almost my entire life savings on that farmhouse. I had risked my relationship with my daughter's husband. I had faced an entire family without fear. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, because that farmhouse I bought with the money from a lifetime of work wasn't just a property. It was a symbol of independence, of security, of a woman's ability to have something no one can take from her. And when that security was threatened, when that refuge was turned into a prison, I did what any mother would do for her child. I gave her back her home. I gave her back her voice. I gave her back her life. And in the process, I taught her the most important lesson of all, that no matter how old you are, no matter how many times you've fallen, you always, always have the right and the power to stand up and say, no more. That night before I went to sleep, I got one last text from Emily. It was a photo of her and Michael in the garden, holding each other, smiling genuinely. And underneath the photo, just 3 words. Thanks for everything. I smiled, put my phone away, and closed my eyes, knowing that my daughter was finally okay, that her house was truly hers, that her life belonged to her, and that if she ever needed me again, I'd be there in 5 minutes ready to fight again. Because that's what mothers do. We don't give up, we don't back down, and we never ever let anyone hurt our children without consequences. Never.